Hi, this is Scott with ClaySys. What we'll be taking a look at with this video today is how to implement the search control on your ClaySys AppForms solutions. Now, in this sample form that you see in front of you, this is a simple scenario of customer information, a drop-down box for the orders for that particular customer, and then this control here that's showing the details about those orders, that is the actual search control. Now, if you've seen some of the other videos in our series, you'll know that this looks very similar to what we've done in the past with the dynamic grid control. But there are two big differences between the dynamic grid control and the search control. The first thing is the data in the dynamic grid control is editable. In a search control, it is read-only. That's difference number one. And then number two is with the search control, we have the ability to change the column type on one or more columns in that control to be a linked button type of control. So you can see this first column, if I hover over these are basically hyperlinks, a link button. What this enables you to do is implement functionality into your form so that you can provide additional details about that item for your users should they need it. So in this case, if I click on this tires item in this one order, it opens up another form, and now I get the details about those tires, how much they cost, where they put in the inventory, that type of thing. Now if I go back to my form, and let's go to a different order, this one has just one item for bicycle. If I select bicycle, same form opens, but now I have the details about that particular item. So this allows your users to get additional information that they might not need all the time, so you don't want it cluttering up your main form, but gives them the ability to see that data should they need it. So let's take a look at how we've got that implemented. Okay, so I'll just start off by closing this form, getting us back to the original, and now I'm going to switch over to another tab I have open, which is to the ClaySys AppForms Designer, so that I can show you how these forms were created. So the first one we'll look at here is the product detail form. Again, this is the form that gets opened when you click on that link button column in the search control on the main form. Now, like is typical of all of my videos in this series, the data in this case is coming from a SharePoint list. So I'll show you that data source very briefly here by choosing the Edit Data Source button on my data source. You can also see right away that the only action I've implemented is the select statement, the ability to get the data. In your real world scenario, you'll probably need to implement maybe an update for sure, maybe even an add. Those are all done the same way. And what I mean by this is when we click the edit button here, you simply need to map the columns that are coming from your list, the columns in your list, to the fields on your form. If you've been through any of the other videos in this series, you've seen me do this a number of times. It's simply mapping the columns from your data source to the fields on your form. Now over here on the right, this is the filter that we're using, so that we only get data back from that SharePoint list where the product name is equal to what is in my product name field back here, which you can't see at the moment, but that field is called TXT product name. That way we get back data just for that one item. So we'll click OK on that. You can also see now that I have a trigger set up. In other words, when does this data source get executed? And that gets executed when the value in that TXT product name field changes. So I'll take a look at that very quickly. Click Finish here and switch over to the rules. And if I select my on product name change rule, again, that's just the name that I gave it, just so that it made sense. When that product name changes, so let's take a look at that over here real quick in the designer. When this form opens, it means I've clicked on something from my search control. By clicking on that link button, what it actually does is populates this TXT product name. I'll show you that in just a moment. It populates it with that particular product name. And then because that's a change, this rule kicks off and executes our data source to go get the data for that particular product. So there's not much to this particular form at all. So if we set aside the main form for a moment and how that name gets populated, this form is simply 5 different fields mapped to the columns in my SharePoint list. And the only thing that's unique about this is we go get the data when the value in that product name field changes. All right, so now let's take a look at the main form, which this is where the search control is and how you set up that functionality to allow you to get that link button type of control. All right, so I'm going to go up here and switch over to our main form by using this drop down, choosing my other form and refreshing. I'm getting this message only because the form is still checked out. And yes, I do want to navigate away from this, so we'll click OK. And now here is my main form. So as you can see, this form also is not very detailed. A few fields up here for the customer information, drop-down box for the orders, and then the search control. So this is where the main functionality comes for this particular video that we really want to talk about today, is the search control. How does this get set up? So let's take a look at this from the beginning. What I mean by that is I'm going to add a couple of rows here just so that I can drop on another search control to show you how this works. Okay, so we'll go to our data section here on the left from our toolbox, and here's our search control at the bottom. So if I drop that on, this is what you see by default. So the first thing to determine is, what data is this control going to show you? Well, in my case for this demo, we know that this is going to show the order details once an order is selected from this drop-down box. All right, so let's go ahead and walk through populating this search control. So over here on the right in the properties pane, you can see there's a data source section here near the bottom. We'll click the ellipses next to items. All right, first item, where is the data coming from? So again, this is SharePoint for me, so if I go previous here, you can see that this is coming from my SharePoint site. All right, let's pick our the order details for this. And click next. And now, which fields do we want to show in this particular search control? Again, like a dynamic grid, you can pick and choose which fields you want to actually show up there. So we know we want to choose product name and quantity, price, and probably line total. So I'll select those four and click next. And do we want any filters? Well, we know that we do, right? We want this to only show the details for the selected order from the drop-down box. So what we'll do here is choose our column from the list, which is my order ID foreign key, where that is equal to my combo box select order. So when the search control actually gets an opportunity to populate the data, it will populate only those items that match whatever order is selected here from this drop-down. All right, let's click next on that. If I was getting data from multiple different tables in quotes, again, that could be different lists or actually different database tables, you'd want to set up a relationship between those tables. That's what this screen gives you the opportunity to do. Since we don't have that scenario, we can just skip this and click next. All right. So now here is where, with the search control, it brings in the column names for you from your SharePoint list, or the data source, I should say in this case. Gives you an opportunity to change those column header names if you so desire, if you want to. Also gives you the default data type. Now, if you've been through, again, some of the other videos, you'll see there's a dynamic grid control, and when you set that up, you have the ability to create the actual columns that you want in that data grid control. In this case, with the search control, it brings in the columns that you've selected, and then you get an opportunity here to either modify the names or the data types this way. Now, all of these really are strings. I say that because here we have a couple of options for like price and line total. We could choose decimal if you wanted to. We could also go over here to, let's say, I think operators, and we could choose the format here if we wanted to be currency as an example. Right? So you can do some modifications there. But that's the minor part of this demo. The biggest portion of this is we want this product name column. This is the one that we want to be our link button type of control, so that we can click on that option and get us that detail form. All right, so if I click on the ellipses here, which gives me an option for configure that column, it brings up this screen. And if you had a link button image you wanted to use, instead of actually having text, you could choose an image and it would show an image there instead. But we'll change this over here from label to link button, and now that opens up another series of operations or options that we need to select from to make this work the way that we want. So what this is doing is allowing you to choose which form you want to open. And as you can see, this could be any of your other forms. It's not tied to the one that I've created here. If you had other forms in a different folder that you've deployed somewhere, doesn't matter. As long as you can select it here and it has the appropriate information in it, you can choose that form. Now we know that our details form is here underneath of my search control sample. So I'll select that. Once you have that selected, we come down here to the bottom and we'll choose our form details. Which field on that form is going to get the data from our main form here? Let me say that again. You're picking which field on the details form is going to receive the data from that column that you click on in the search control. So in my case, we wanted that to be the product name field. That's what's going to receive the data once I click on it. And then where is that data coming from? That's coming from my product name column in my search control. So if that makes sense, let's go over that just one more time. This is my form, the product details form. So it's that form. We want the TXT product name field on that form to be populated with whatever data is showing in my product name column in my search control when I click on that item. Okay, so once you have those three fields filled out, you click the plus to add it. And the other option that you have up here that I just wanted to mention to you, we're not using this in this particular demo, but if there is, if you have rules that you want to execute on the form load of your target form, in other words, the details form, if you had rules on form load that you wanted to execute when this form opened, by default, this is indeed checked up here, execute those form load rules. This is a scenario that, again, to me is one of the more powerful things with ClaySys AppForms. You have the ability to turn that off. Maybe you have that details form, maybe that form in and of itself is a standalone form that just users use to, let's say, add products and whatnot, right, to your list. Maybe when they use it as a standalone form, you have rules that you want to fire when the form opens on load. But in this case, when you're opening it to show one item, you may not want that those rules to fire. You can uncheck that if you wanted to, and then those particular rules will not fire. Very powerful option in ClaySys AppForms that you don't have, for example, with InfoPath. Now, again, for us, it doesn't matter in this demo because we have no rules on form load, so it doesn't matter if we check that or not, but I wanted to make you aware of that option. All right, so we'll click OK to this. That screen that we just finished, that is the key to making this process work. That right there is the key. So if we click Finish on this, and actually I've got ahead of myself, we don't want to click Finish. The next thing that you need to do is add a trigger. When do you want this search control to get the data? Right? Now we know that we don't want to get this until an option has been selected from our combo box called CBO Select Order. Right? So I'm not going to check that here because we already got that selected. I don't want to add another one. But remember, that's the last thing of this process is adding that trigger. When do you want the data to be populated into the search control? So I'm just going to uncheck that, close that, and we'll click Finish. We have now, in those few steps, done the exact configuration that we need for this search control to implement that link button functionality. So if I were to preview this, this is actually the new search control that I've added because you can see the one up here is I've hidden it and showing this line is all. Let's go ahead and select a customer. Let's select an order. Now, this data would normally appear, but remember, I did not add the trigger, so it didn't. But this is the result. This is what gives us those 4 columns and would give us that link button control. The configuration that we just went through is what makes that happen. All right, so let's see if there's anything else here that we want to look at from this perspective. So I'm going to take you now through the details of this one up here that's actually the working one. So I'll delete this. All right, let's click on that. You can see that I did change that particular control's name. Doesn't make any difference what it is, as long as it makes sense in your particular scenario. I did not really change any of the options up here either. Those are all default. So we'll go to the data source. Let's take a look at these items. So you can see I selected the same. I did include the order ID foreign key in mine. I'm not showing it. You'll see that in a moment. I really didn't need to include that. So here is the same filter that I have on this control that we just walked through. No relationships, as I mentioned to you, not for this. And you can see here that I do have the order ID foreign key, again, because it was one of the columns I selected. It's automatically put into this list, and I've just chosen to hide that by checking that checkbox. But I've modified the width of some of these and whatnot, and you'll see here if I click on these ellipses for our product name, there is the configuration that we just talked about. So that is the really powerful option in a search control. It gives you the ability to create one of these linked button type of columns so that your users can click on that item and then open up another form to give them more explicit details about that item. Keep in mind, it is not limited to just one column. I could have, if it warranted it or made sense, I could have every column in my search control be a link button, and it would take them to different forms to show them different pieces of information about whatever they are clicking on. All right, so let's finish this, and we'll go ahead and save those changes, although there really weren't any. Now, like all of my other samples, again, if you've seen any of the other videos in this particular demonstration, or video series, I should say, I'm using a sample ASPX page that I load this up. So I'm going to refresh this page one more time so you can see it. This is how it loads up by default. So there is my form. You can see that the details search control is indeed hidden at the moment. So is the total field. That's just some additional functionality that I've built into this form. We'll select the DEF company. My data populates about that company. In this case, we have just one order. I'll select that. Now my search control displays, my total displays for that particular item. I can click on my headers item. There's my product detail form that's just opened, showing me the details about the headers. If I close that, and let's change companies here, we'll go back to ABC. Choose this order. There are the 3 items in that order. If I choose wheels on this one, now my product detail form launches and I've got the details about the wheels. So again, the search control, very similar to a dynamic grid control. 2 big differences again. Dynamic grid control, the data in that control is editable. It is not in the search control. Search control data is read-only. In the search control, you have the ability to add these link button types of controls or change the column to a link button control that allows you then to provide your users the ability to have additional details about the item that they've just selected. I hope you found this video to be beneficial. We are going to be producing more of these how-to type videos in the coming weeks and months, so be sure to check our website often for new demonstrations. You can find all of our videos at http://www.claysys.com/pages/viewdemo.aspx. If there is a video you would like to see that is currently not on our site, please let us know by sending an email to info@claysys.com, and we will do our best to get one created for you. Again, I hope you found this video to be of benefit, and thank you for using ClaySys AppForms.